Fly belly up.
This is the game. It's cat and mouse.
Smoked a turkey. Yes. He is down. He is freaking down.
Said he shot an absolute giant.
Fall Obsession, baby.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Fall Obsession podcast episode. I am Sam Thrash, your host for this week's podcast. And this week I have two newcomers to the podcast joining us. They are both field staffers with us and big contributors to us here at Fall Obsession. Field staffers Rob Redmond and Nathan Koenig. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Good, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you guys were able to come on the show.
Yeah, it's good to get on and be able to talk about some of the hunts we've had this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, excited to be here.
For sure, guys. Well, before we get into it, I do want to mention that this podcast is brought to our listeners by our friends over at Elite Archery. We are very, very pleased to be partnered with a company like Elite. I know I'm enjoying my 2020 cure that I've been running so far this season. Can't wait to be hunting with it. So if you guys have not shot an Elite bow before or are interested in checking them out, you can go to elitearchery.com, see what all they have to offer. You can order Elite products, including their bows, from their website. And, of course, I always recommend that you go to a local dealer and actually shoot one and see what you think. So be sure that you check out our friends over at Elite Archery. Gentlemen, how was your spring seasons?
Oh, it was great. Lots of action. Yeah, I couldn't ask for anything better. Quite a few bears coming through this season in the spring. Got to watch a lot of bears. Got to just get out there and see what there was. So it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'm from Texas. I am not a bear hunter, although I very much would like to be one day. I can't say that I've checked that off my bucket list. So I know we want to talk about some spring bear hunting, talk about your seasons and your experiences this year, but I'm going to kind of just steer the conversation, and I'm going to learn with our listeners from you guys since you're the experts here for sure. So
sounds good.
So kind of give me an idea, walk me into the start of this season. Tell me about kind of what your game plan was going into the year, and kind of your own experience bear hunting as you kicked off this season.
Here, I've been bear hunting for a number of years now. So this year I really wanted to get out there and see if I could get a big bear. That was my goal. If I didn't see a bear that was just massive and popped out at me, I had no intention really of harvesting a bear this year. So I wanted to put in the time and effort and really get out there and see what I could bring in. And thankfully this year it all worked out. Kind of got to knock one off my own bucket list and get a bear that was pretty much the biggest bear I'd ever seen in my life. So it was great. I couldn't ask for anything better. Yeah, it was a lot of fun there being with Rob for that. And myself, I didn't really have a big plan going in this year. I do a lot of hiking in the springs, a lot of just getting out there. And I figured if I saw a bear, I was going to take it spot and stalk. And Rob, he gave me the opportunity to come sit with him at one of his baits and use his bow. So it was a really awesome time to get out there and take my first bear with a bow.
That's awesome, man. So Nathan, you were taking the more of the spot and stalk approach, and Rob, you hunt more over baited areas and stuff like that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What kind of preparation goes into getting ready for spring bear season? What do you guys make sure? What's your checklist? Where are you making sure it gets done out there in the woods before the season starts?
Oh man, it starts basically in winter. Big part of bear baiting obviously is just coming up with the bait. That's a huge part of it. Having enough bait to get out there and regularly bait it. I mean, typically I fill the barrels probably every 2 to 3 days, and I'll usually bait them for about a month before I get adequate traffic and get the bigger bears that wake up start to come out and get on the bait. So typically over the winter, any kind of dry food scraps that you can come across, cereals, old bread, bagels, donuts, whatever you can freeze and stock up ahead of time, it saves you a lot of hassle in the end. You'll have a big supply. I mean, in a 2 to 3 day period, if you had an active bait site, you could have 100 pounds of food gone in basically 48 hours. So over the winter, I'm finding sources for food. Grease is a big part of baiting as well. It brings in a strong scent. You pour it on the ground, it gets all over the bear's paws. They track that scent around so other bears come in. So typically any friends I know that have fryer oil, stuff like that, you're kind of piling it up and putting it in bins and just preparing for the spring season. So a huge part of it for me is just trying to get enough bait that it's not as big of a financial hit come baiting season.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Yeah, for spot and stock, it's basically all about putting boots on the ground. There's a lot of bears around. You got to look for, the grassy hills, and just keep on the ground, keep hiking. I put in probably at least 25 kilometers this spring without a whole lot of luck. But for me, it's also, I'm not only just spring bear hunting, I'm also like pre-scouting for the fall, looking for deer trails and all that stuff. So it's kind of a combination for me.
Gotcha. So when you're out there spot and stalking and you're or scouting, preparing for kind of the spot and stalk aspect of bear hunting, for me as an outsider looking in, I feel like it would be more difficult to kind of tell one bear from the other. Are there ways that you can tell like your target bears, or is that even a thing, or what areas they're particularly in? My question might not be making a lot of sense, but
No, it does. Field judging bears is super hard. When you have a bait, you get to look at a lot of different bears. You get to look at them from 20 yards away. So when you're spot and stalk, you definitely have a harder time judging a bear. A good judge of bear's size is a crease on the head, small ears. If you have any kind of way to judge the heights of their shoulders, like I said, when you're at a bait, it's not any easier baiting, but you have a little bit better opportunity to look at the bears and take your time.
And definitely when you're spot and stalking, the sows, they'll tend to wander off from the cubs to look for food sources and stuff and just leave them. So you could get onto some tracks and get onto what you think is a decent sized bear and start stalking it and get there and find out it has cubs, and then you've just basically spent a whole lot of time and effort for no reason. You got to start back at square one.
Gotcha.
So it's definitely a lot more work.
Yeah, you might glass a bear that's a mile and a half off, and they have small cubs, so you never see them until you're up close. You might spend a couple hours hiking in, and you get there and there's cubs, so you kind of wasted your afternoon.
Gotcha. So again, a novice looking in here, I'm assuming you guys are only hunting the males primarily. Is there really a season for sows, or are you primarily hunting the male bear?
Yeah, where we hunt, it's open for sows, but it's illegal to harvest a sow with cubs.
Okay.
So if it's a dry sow, you can harvest it, but typically, obviously, we try to avoid harvesting a sow.
That's understandable for sure. So tell us about this year. Tell us about these hunts, about these success stories that you guys have from your hunts this year.
Yeah, really, this season was almost a write-off for me. Our area up here in northern Alberta, we had a massive flood that kind of put 1,000 homes underwater here, and I was one of them. So I was kind of in the middle of moving around, trying to recover our home and all that kind of stuff. So I'd kind of given up on the bear season after I'd already put a month of effort in. And Nathan called me and kind of talked me back into it. He's like, "You got some spare time. You already put all the effort in." He's like, "Let's just go out and see what we can do with what you've already established." So he kind of put me back on the right track, and we got back into it. But yeah, like out here, the bear densities are huge, and it's when you get out there and you got 3-4 bears on your bait, it's really easy to misjudge and take one that's smaller. So you got to kind of put the time in and sit in the stand. And this year, since we wanted to have a little more space and do a couple new things we hadn't done before, we decided to hunt from a ground blind. In addition, the area we were in had a forest fire about 5 years ago, so a lot of the trees weren't exactly trees you want to be up in a stand in.
Yeah.
A lot of swaying trees that have the high potential to fall over. So we took the ground blind approach, and let me tell you, that was a whole different rush this year, being on the ground 20 yards away from a bear staring at you.
Oh, I imagine so. I can't even imagine.
It definitely added a new element to the hunt. It made it a lot more exciting. Unless I'm by myself, I'm pretty much hooked on hunting out of a ground blind now.
Yeah, it's really hard to beat the excitement of hunting out of a ground blind. We had one bear come in. At first, we thought he was charging at us, but I think he was running from another bear. He came to about 5 feet away, and that was definitely gets your heart pumping.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he didn't have a care in the world that we were there.
So Rob, you said at the beginning of this episode that the bear that you killed this year, and forgive me for not remembering exactly, did you say it was one of the biggest or the biggest bear that you've shot up till now?
Oh, it hands down the biggest I've shot, and it's probably the biggest I've actually ever came across, even in passing. Like up here, it's not uncommon to see bears when you're out and about, especially if you're hunting moose or hunting deer. You'll generally see bears throughout your time in the bush, and between all my time hunting bears and any other animals I've hunted out here, that was by far the largest black bear I've ever seen personally.
Wow. So did you know he was in the area, or was it a surprise for you when you first saw him?
No, I definitely knew he was in the area. So when I'm baiting, I'm running trail cameras and we're checking them and checking the times and whatnot that the bears are actually coming in. So when you're sitting, you kind of allocate your sitting times to around the same times that you're patterning these bears. And he was only coming at night. So typically if a large bear, they get large for a reason, they're smart. So the large bears will come in and feed at night and make the smaller bears have to come out in the daylight and eat. So I'd seen him on the cameras basically every time I baited it, he'd come out at night. And we knew he was there, but we just hadn't seen him yet during the daytime.
Definitely exciting seeing that big bear come in. The reactions from the other bears is unreal.
I imagine
you think that you see two bears, they're fighting over the barrel. So they're aggressive towards each other. And this bear come in he was probably still 200 yards out, and these bears bolted as fast as they could get out of there.
Wow.
Yeah, as soon as they caught scent of that larger boar coming in, they didn't look back. They were running in opposite directions. Like they knew just from the scent of him, the size of him, they didn't want any part of it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild.
I imagine, and I'm relating it to something I know, and really the only thing I know, but I imagine it's kind of like, down here in Texas at least, we're allowed to bait for deer, and I imagine it's similar to having does and younger bucks on a bait or on a food plot or something like that, and then all of a sudden you have a dominant buck walk in. I guess that's what I'm relating it to on my end from a guy that has no experience, so...
Yeah, it's basically the exact same thing. The big boar comes in, pushes them off, and lets them know that it's his.
Gotcha.
They know not to waste their time.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we baited it for we baited it for probably about a month, going out every 2 to 3 days, making sure we had a good amount of bears coming out so we could judge what was in the area, and then we made the decision to do the first sit so Nathan could attempt for an archery bear. And we sat for that one. It was probably an hour? 2 hours?
I think it was half hour only, but when we saw the first bear.
I think when the first bear came out when Nathan was bow hunting, I looked over and I thought I saw a burnt log for a while, sitting there probably for about 20 minutes. And then we kept watching the bait and looking around the ground blind, kind of doing your 360, seeing what's around you. We had the blind up against a large piece of deadfall to kind of protect our backside so we didn't have to worry about anything sneaking up from directly behind us. And then I kind of glanced back over, and what I thought was a burnt log was now gone. And then I looked at Nathan, and I was like, I think we got some action. I was like, there's a log missing.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. And then they come from the side of you, so you're kind of looking over your shoulder. He disappeared what seemed to be behind us. So you're in a ground blind and you can't see behind you. You're kind of, wondering where did this bear go now? You're kind of on your toes, head's on a swivel. But he ended up coming out in front of us, so it was pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
How far away did you say you shot him?
I think we ranged the shot at 23 yards.
Wow, man, that's awesome that you're able to check off a bear with a bow and at a range like that, man. That's cool.
Yeah, I hadn't bow hunted in I think at least 6 years, so. Rob asked me if I wanted, and I had shot a few bears in the past with a rifle, so if I was going to shoot another one, I really wanted to use a bow. So Rob gave me the opportunity to come out and shoot his bow. And it was kind of like riding a bike, so we got out there and sat, and he came in and put him down.
Yeah. Now, mind you, this bow was completely set up for me. We went out the night before. Nathan took, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 shots. Dead on with every shot, and he was like, all right, I'm ready to go. when we got out there, it was through and through, in one side, through the lungs, out the other side. After not shooting a bow for 6 years,
Wow, that's impressive right there, man.
it just made me feel bad about my shot.
Man, I know I was thoroughly impressed with both of y'all sending in and those success pictures, basically that content after you killed them. I know, Nathan, you had been sending some pictures from kind of progressing throughout the season with some of your stalks and your sits out there earlier on, and to see you guys finally be able to put some down like that was awesome. I was thoroughly impressed and happy for y'all, for sure.
And then when my bear came, the second sit, it basically almost didn't happen because like I said, these older bears are extremely smart. So when we first set up that evening, we were there probably, I'd say, 40 minutes, and that big boar walked out, basically looked at Nathan and I in the ground blind and said, "No, thanks." Turned around, walked back into the bush.
Yeah, I probably spooked him off. I was fooling around with the camera trying to get it on him, and he was smart. He looked right at us, stood there, looked at us, slowly walked off. We thought that was probably the last time we'd see him.
Oh, man.
But thankfully, we had a few more bears come in, and then we had 2 boars come in, start fighting over the bait. So they were crashing around the food and the bait, and they were, I don't even know how you would describe the noises that bears make, but they were yapping at each other and chasing each other around. And thankfully, I think that commotion it basically told the other bear that if he doesn't get out there soon, there's going to be no food left. So that was probably the only reason we got a second opportunity, that particular sit on that big boar coming in.
Well, I'm very glad that you got that opportunity, man, because that thing was a stud.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I've never struggled with an animal before. Like, we've killed lots of big animals. We've killed moose. We cut the hindquarters off, carry those out individually, but it took everything Nathan and I had basically to lift up half the bear onto the log and then try to hold him there and get the other half up so we could get a picture of the size of him. Like, it was a legitimate struggle. I'd say he's probably about 350, 375
Yeah, I'd say
pounds.
he's got to be 350 for sure.
Wow, that's crazy.
They're different animals to move. They're built weird. Not compared to, they're built a lot different than a deer. It's hard. You can't get your hands around their wrists to drag them or anything. It's interesting.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I never really thought of that before. Huh.
And to add to the excitement, so the big boar that I took with the rifle ended up going down, I would say, probably about 30, 40 minutes before dark. So we gave him, 5 minutes or so before we walked over, just in case.
We could see him where he was down, so we knew he was not moving.
Okay.
And then when we started processing them, we were tubing them out so we could do a half mount with the hide and trying to salvage the meat at the same time. So it started to get closer to dark, and the entire time we were working with that bear, we had 2 other bears circling us from around the other side. So I'll be the first to admit Nathan's a lot better with a knife than me when it comes to mounts. So he was taking the lead role in it, and I was kind of helping him and watching for those other 2 bears, but they wouldn't let off. At one point, Nathan had to take the shotgun and shoot a slug into the ground in front of him, and still wasn't bothered at all.
Wow.
Never even flinched.
Wow.
We ended up chasing him off, and then he came back. So we got the bear into manageable pieces and decided to hike it out of there and finish it at home.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. We had him sitting down watching us from both, one in front, one behind us. So it was, again, your head's on a swivel. You're just waiting. We were ready to get out of there before it got dark.
Oh, I imagine so, man. That's, you talk about being on pins and needles and on edge, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast when you're baiting, because all the bears in the area that have been there, they know that's a food source. So now, and they've kind of associated the human scent, like the smaller bears especially, they associate the scent of us with bringing the food in. So now, like, for the most part, their fear of that specific area has kind of dwindled away.
Yeah.
So if you're not shooting at them, the young ones, they're kind of more curious than anything. And like, by young, I mean like a 2 to 3 year old bear, because they don't leave the sow until they're about 2. But once you get into the older bears, obviously they've matured and come across humans, and they know much better than to come around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, that's crazy. I'm glad that y'all were able to slip out of there all right.
It's the rush. Like, I love deer hunting. I love hunting moose and big game. I'm avid waterfowl. Like, it's all so extremely enjoyable to me for different reasons. But the primary reason besides the meat for bear hunting is the rush. Like there's no feeling like it when you got a creature like that 20 yards away from you staring at you. Especially when you're in a ground blind.
Yeah, it's a whole different world from waterfowl hunting, and it's a totally different kind of rush.
For sure. Wow. Well, guys, so another thing, and I, again, novice here, and I'm asking novice questions, but I have never eaten bear before. I've never heard how you cook bear before. So can you guys give us some idea on some of your favorite recipes and some of your favorite stuff to cook up with the meat? Because like I said, myself and probably a lot of guys that listen to this podcast might not really have ever, one, thought of that, and two, have any recipes of their own. So
with bear, it's an extremely fatty meat, obviously, especially when you harvest an older bear, because they're obviously building up those fat layers so they can hibernate throughout the winter. So what most people do is they'll skin the bear out, and then they'll kind of skin off all the fat. Then they'll process the fat down to kind of by melting it on a stovetop in a pot and create their own lard. And they can use that lard for cooking. They can use it. It makes water repellency for leather boots. It has all different uses. People value the lard. Sorry, even if you didn't want it yourself. Basically, if you take it to town, you know anybody, someone will come pick it up off you. There's so many uses for it. But the bear meat itself, like personally for me, with the flavor of it, I prefer it for sausages, like making Italian sausages, honey garlic, smoky, stuff like that. It goes really well. Roasts, ham, like that's what I'm most excited about this year. I'm gonna brine one for 2 weeks and then put it on the Traeger and make a ham out of it. It's delicious in a ham.
Wow.
I've ate a lot of bear ham, so this will be my first actual attempt on a smoker myself. So I'm excited to try this and see if I can make it a successful one.
Yeah, same kind of thing. A lot of sausage made, jerky. You can do the roasts and stuff with the backstrap, ham, stew.
Yeah, it's good for stew meat.
Yeah, do a lot of stew meat.
You guys do all your own processing, I assume, too?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't know.
It's pretty expensive to have it done.
Yeah, and I don't know what butchers are like for you guys, but up here, basically how you bring the meat is how you're getting the meat back. They don't really understand fully how to process wild game. They don't take off that age layer. They don't take off any hair you might have missed. They kind of just cut it up like they cut up a cow, and that typically doesn't work for wild game. You got to know how to clean it and get the aged meat off the outside and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we
Especially
have,
in the city.
yeah, we have wild game processors down here for like deer and wild boar and that kind of stuff that are pretty frequent, and I know. I've done some myself. I did my Montana antelope all by myself with the help of Drew Tordick up there. But down here in Texas, we have a good relationship with Cinnamon Creek, and they do good work. But I really don't know if they'd know what to do with a bear if somebody brought that in. That's not a very common thing to drop off around here.
Oh yeah, they definitely probably leave the fat on. They wouldn't quite know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Probably on a larger bear, I'm talking it's probably an inch thick.
Oh, wow.
Especially in the fall.
Yeah.
You can't even hold on to them onto their hide because it's so greasy. You can't. They're tough to skin because of that fat layer.
Yeah.
You basically take that deer fat that gets on your knife and kind of gets on your hands sometimes and multiply that by 5, and that's kind of how your knife gets in your hand.
Oh,
Super
man.
slippery. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
But I will say one thing when you look at a bear compared to when you skin it out. It is a lot smaller underneath that hide than you would think.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I would imagine so, for sure.
Like once you get the hide off, the hide's probably, I'd say, anywhere from 30 to 40 pounds of the bear itself.
Yeah, easily. But that bear of Rob's, his arms and legs were massive. It was a cool sight to see. Yeah, the last big bear I shot was 12 years ago, so I kind of had almost forgotten about how massive their arms really are.
I kind of regret not taking the bow, having him come out, because there's a good chance. I haven't had a chance of measuring it because he's frozen and take to the taxidermist. I just leave the head attached so they can process it properly, so I don't make any incorrect cuts. But there's a good chance that he's over 19.5 inches. Good chance he could be Pope and young, but I didn't take the bow.
I think I used his last broadhead.
Well, the real backstory the real backstory on why we didn't take the bow is Tacticam came in the night before, and we were excited to try it out, but we didn't have a bow mount, so we're like, oh, we'll just take the rifle.
Yeah. And then I didn't have it set up properly, so we never got good enough footage off of it.
Oh, man.
It didn't work out well in the end, but it was a wash. But we got the bear, so.
And the size for a Boone and Crockett bear is drastically larger.
Yeah, that's one of the, I think it's almost one of the tougher animals to get Boone and Crockett.
What is it, 21-inch skull?
21-inch skull. You're talking the 500-pound bear.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, I know the feeling of just barely missing a record book. I had my pronghorn that I shot up in Montana a couple years ago. He taped out. I shot him with a bow, and he taped out at, I think it was it was 68 and 1/8, I believe, or 3/8. I can't remember, but the minimum for the record book in Pope and Young is 67 inches on a pronghorn, and I didn't know that. I didn't measure him. I didn't do anything until I got him back from the taxidermist, and he had a cutter that had broken off. It was still hanging there, but it was broken, and I decided to get it repaired. And because I had that repair made, it's artificial, quote unquote, and therefore ineligible. So I can relate to one decision affecting you being in a record book.
Yeah, it kind of eats you inside. You're kind of second guess some of the decisions you make after that. You're like, oh man.
Yeah, I didn't even, and I'm not losing sleep over it. I really didn't even think about it until I did measure it. A bunch of my buddies were like, dude, you need to score him. He's a stud. And finally I gave in and did it. And I was like, oh, dang, we might have something here.
Yeah, they always have some little stipulation to make it so it's a little more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think next year we're going to focus on trying to get a record book bear.
There you go.
Try and get a Pope and Young.
Sorry, yeah, and this year, as compared to other years, we weren't even as deep in the bush as we typically would be. We had an off-highway vehicle ban here for high risk of wildfires, so everything we did had to be on our backs. When you're hauling 100 pounds of food in every couple of days,
Oh,
you
yeah.
kind of don't go as far in as you'd like to go. But if the weather permits next year, we'll probably be a lot deeper in the bush and have a lot better opportunity to get some of the larger bears that are untouched lured in, hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good segue, too, into kind of the next question I was going to ask, and that was based on kind of you guys and your experience this year, as you look toward next year, how's your game plan going to change?
Yeah, definitely try to get deeper. That's the key for us, for sure. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The deeper you can get towards bears that have never came in contact with bait sites, never came in contact with people. Obviously, they're going to be much larger because they don't have any natural predators except themselves. The only thing that hunts a bear is a bear, basically. Male boars will eat cubs, basically, so they can get the sow to go back into heat, so she doesn't have cubs anymore.
Wow, I did not know
that. That'll be typically they raise them for 2 years, so if the boar can kill them when they're small, she'll be ready to go again next year, basically. So they prey on the cubs, but besides humans, they have no natural predators here. So you can get to where humans don't typically get to them. That's where you're going to get to the very large boars. And up here, we have an abundance of natural vegetation for them, like especially blueberries.
Raspberries.
We have wild blueberries, wild raspberries, basically anywhere you go, and they can just eat those and get massive. So.
Yeah, that's crazy. I did not know that that was part of a boar's behavior, was to prey on the cubs like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, typically, like if you see cubs in the tree, like if you're driving by and just happen to see them, or you're walking, it's usually because the sow is hiding them from a boar. So get them as high as they can up onto little branches, where if the boar was to get up that high, it would break off, basically, so they're safe.
Yeah.
And they'll leave them there until they feel like it's safe for the cubs to come down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Pretty amazing how high and fast they can get up a tree too.
Oh yeah, you see videos all the time of them scurrying up trees next to hunters and everything. I would not want to be in that situation.
The one I harvested last year, after I shot it, it ran, it climbed about 18 feet up a tree before its heart stopped, and then it fell down the tree.
Wow, that's crazy.
Just its natural reaction was to hide, basically.
Yeah.
Where this boar that I got this year, because he was so big, his natural reaction when he felt the impact was to fight it. So he's kind of started barrel rolling, trying to bite his bite behind him thinking something was attacking him from behind. But the bear I shot last year was a lot smaller, so its reaction was to hide.
Yeah, it was actually it was my first archery bear, but it was also my first bear I've shot off of bait. So I haven't spent a huge amount of time at baits. I baited for a couple of years, but I didn't have the time to sit myself many times, because when I baited was when we had a big fire go through Fort McMurray, and it burned down. I had 2 tree stands burned, all my cameras, all my barrels, everything burned. So that's kind of when I shut her down on baiting for a couple of years, because it's a lot of work to lose that. And I started going back into just hiking around, spot and stock, and it was pretty awesome to sit there we sat, I think, how many hours do you think we sat for your bear?
6 or 7 hours.
Yeah, so we sat for 6 or 7 hours, and there was probably only an hour of that we weren't looking at a bear. So it's really exciting, a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Wow.
And definitely the biggest pro to a baiting situation versus spot and stock is obviously it's easy to make an ethical shot, whether you're using bow or a gun, because you have the time. You can wait for them to be broadside. You're very close, so it's easy to make an ethical shot and put the animal down. And it's extremely easy to pick the animal you want. So you're not going to mistake a sow with cubs for a boar, and those kind of mistakes that are very easy to make. Because basically, when any bear is standing head on with you, the bear looks massive. It's not until the bear turns broadside that you realize the true size of it.
Yeah, there was a couple times when another bear came in, and we're debating, is that the one? Is that the one? Because when they're looking right at you, they basically all look big. You got to really look at their ears, look at how big their eyes are. They got little itty bitty eyes and small ears. They got a big head.
And that's interesting too. And I kind of like the idea behind having to work harder to tell what's a shooter, what's not, because again, comparing it to what I know with deer hunting, you have a big buck walk out, and I mean, you pretty much take one look at him and oh, he's a shooter. He's a mature deer. And with bears, I am learning along with our listeners, like I said, that it's more of a process to be able to tell what's good to take and what's not.
Yeah, another way to judge is that you have a barrel to look at. So when they're walking beside this barrel, you know exactly how tall they are. Versus you're 200 yards away, spot and stock. It's pretty hard to tell what you're looking at. Definitely easier to get a mature boar off of bear bait. Not easier; it's a ton of work, but easier to judge.
Yeah, and easier to make a clean shot for sure. And for us, it's kind of for me, it's kind of enjoyable because it's basically the only animal besides wolves that we're allowed to bait. So it's like it's an opportunity for us to do something we don't normally get to do, and in a season we normally don't get to hunt. Obviously, up as north as we are, there's no turkey. It's much too cold for that. So basically, the only thing we can hunt in the spring is a wolf or a bear.
Yeah, great way to break up the wait for the fall.
So is spring bear season, is that the only bear season, or are there other bear seasons at other points during the year?
There's a spring and bear season, so you can actually spring and fall season. Sorry, so you can get tag in the spring, and you can actually get a supplementary tag, so you can take 2 bears in the year.
Yeah, and the fall season runs parallel with our big game season.
Yeah, well, I don't tend to hunt bears in the fall often because I'm usually busy waterfowl hunting and big deer hunting. So.
And yeah, that's understandable. And like you guys said, you don't have turkey up there due to the conditions. Down here, turkey is our spring hunting, and it's kind of the same way. We have a fall season where we can shoot some, but I tend to gravitate more toward, if I'm going to chase a turkey, I'm going to do it in spring because I'm focused on deer and other stuff during the fall for sure. So
exactly. We wish we had a turkey season.
Yeah.
They're fun. They can be pretty fun, that's for sure. So you guys just mentioned, and this is not in my notes, this is just a kind of a thought that ran in my mind. Tell me about wolf hunting, man, because you guys mentioned that, and that's something that's always sparked an interest of mine. And what's that like? What's that like up there for y'all?
It is the most difficult hunting you can do.
Yeah, for
Really?
sure.
They are by far the smartest animal in our country, for sure, by a long shot.
Yeah, I would say the best way is baiting for sure. But even then, it takes a long time before they'll start coming out in the day on a bait. They're smart. They know it's a bait.
Yeah.
And it's complete polar opposite in terms of setup versus a bear. When you're setting up for wolves on a bait, if you have the opportunity, you're setting up and you want to be at least 300 yards away.
Yeah, you get as far as you can, basically.
If you're any closer, they're sending you, and they're not playing that. They're well aware you're there. You're not going to trick them that you're not there, so you need to make sure that you're far enough away that they can't scent you, and try through whatever manipulation with the bait you're putting out and the times you're putting it out to try to coax them into coming out during the day.
Huh.
Because you also don't just have one of them that's going to smell you. You have a whole pack that's going to smell you,
Yeah.
and they communicate very well.
Well, that's wolf. That's always been something, like I said, that sparked my interest. And when you mentioned that, I was a little curious because that's a bucket list hunt for me.
Yeah, I personally, be the first to admit, I haven't had success yet. That's one of my goals for this coming winter. Once our big game season starts, is to really put in some time. And like to add to the challenge for us here, you basically got to do it during the winter so you can get tracks and get on them, because the abundance of boreal forest we have here, chances of just stumbling across their tracks are pretty slim unless they're on some big game tracks themselves chasing them.
Yeah.
So you basically got to set up in the winter so you can see them in the snow. And then once you're setting up in the winter in the snow, usually you got 2 to 3 feet of snow to deal with.
Yeah, so you're not just getting in there at the quad, or you basically need a snowmobile or tracks on your machine. And then you're dealing with temperatures in minus 30 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
So you want to get out as far as you can, but you also don't want to be break down and get stuck out there.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, man,
So
y'all.
we can bait. Sorry, we can
No.
bait for wolves anytime there's a big game season open.
Gotcha.
So there is actually quite a bit of a season you can hunt them, but it's pretty difficult.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the friends of mine that have had success so far, it's basically been spot and stalk just by coincidence. They've been out hunting for other big game, happen to see one at a long distance, and they make the move to try to close the distance and get a shot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My previous employer, he shot one out. He was just traveling down a cut line, and he had, I think it was 4 wolves across the cut line in front of him, and he actually shot 2 of them.
Oh, wow.
And the one big wolf, when he got up to it, was still alive, and he was fairly worried about it, so he shot it, and he shot it in the head. And when this animal was measured out, it was over a 20-inch skull on a wolf. So
Wow.
I shot a 320-pound black bear that had a 18 and a 1/8-inch skull. So these wolves are monsters up here. There's some monster wolves. His wolf would have actually been the new world record, but he shot it in the head. So it was kind of like your antelope. They weren't able to score it
Wow.
officially.
That's
So
crazy.
he has this thing mounted, full body mount on the wall, and it's massive. It's awe-inspiring almost.
Wow. Man, it's
The
so.
one only time I actually had wolves come in when I was hunting was when I was bear hunting. I was up in a tree stand with my bow, and I was by myself, and I could hear running down this path, and I just couldn't understand what is making this noise. And I looked up, and it was 3 wolves running down the path. Like, to me, they almost sounded like a herd of deer or something running down the path. It was so loud.
Wow.
But they were 150 yards away, so I couldn't coax them to get over to me. I think they smelt me, so they wouldn't come within 150 yards. I was up in a tree stand with the bow. But that's another pretty exciting thing when you're bear hunting. You could see a wolf come in.
Man, it's so interesting to hear just y'all's environment, not only the animals that you have up there, but I mean, like you're talking about with snowmobiles and getting way back in there. It's so much different than what we're used to down here, and it's probably second nature to y'all up there. But man, it's crazy to think about sometimes for me at least.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest change between there and here would be the difference in what's public land and what's private land. Like probably, I think it's upwards in the high 60 to 70% of our province that we live in is crown land owned by the government that is undeveloped. So it's just boreal forest basically anywhere. Most of it's inaccessible because it's muskeg, so it's basically water mud mix for you more or less sink at a site. You got to kind of find access points that are basically old well pads or drill sites and
Logging roads.
logging roads and going through those paths. But yeah, it's really, really hard country to access. And I know Texas is pretty much exclusively privately owned, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is a very vast majority of it is private. We do have some public land hunting grounds, but man, just hunting in general is so popular down here, and hunting properties, leases, they're hard to come by. They're more expensive down here than other states, it seems like, and because of that, public land, when bow season's not as bad, but especially when you get into a general season where rifles are open and all that, public land, I mean, it literally gets crowded sometimes, and it's not. It kind of takes away from the thrill and everything that you think of really when you think of hunting. So
Yeah, it can make it a lot difficult. A lot more
Absolutely.
difficult, sir. Yeah, here they basically abolished that. It's illegal to pay any kind of compensation for a lease to hunt.
wow.
Yeah, you can't go to a farmer and say, I'll give you $100 a month to hunt your land. It's illegal.
Their goal was basically for that purpose. They didn't want people to have specific areas that were high densities of animals on more or less their own control, especially with the outfitters.
If you'd have an outfitter who's making a ton of money off of guiding, he'd be paying all the farmers to take control of their land. So let the average Joe get out there more.
Mind you, I don't know how well permission will go this year with the current state of the world.
Yeah, we wanted to do some spring snow goose hunting. That's our other spring season. It's a little bit before bear, and that was our biggest concern, is getting permission. You can't exactly go knocking door to door asking people.
Yeah.
With the whole coronavirus thing, it's kind of especially farmers, you wonder if they're going to come out with a shotgun in their hand or what.
Yeah, it's interesting times that we live in. That's for sure.
It's always easier to get permission if you walk up with your 2 kids or something.
Yeah, definitely doesn't hurt your chances at all.
Yeah. All right, guys. So, like I said, a lot of cool stuff, and I love learning about what you guys got going on up here. I know we're kind of going to start wrapping it up here a little bit, and I always have some questions to ask newcomers on the podcast, just to kind of rapid fire questions, if you will. So, real quick, if you guys can, each one of you, what are some bucket list hunts that you guys have that you haven't completed yet?
I'd say my number one bucket list would be a caribou. I'd love to get up north, way up north, and track down a caribou.
For me, I mean, I guess it's kind of cliche to a lot of people, but it's probably a sheep hunt in the mountains for sure.
Both of those are on my list, and when you go caribou hunting, you got to invite me, because that is also my number one.
Yeah.
So, I know you guys have done a lot of hunting, and Nathan, you mentioned off the air, off recording, about the whitetail hunting you do, and we're gonna get you back on the podcast to talk about deer hunting for sure. But what's you guys' favorite hunting memory up to this point, each one of you? One that really stands out.
I think it was probably my first mule deer with my dad. It's hard to beat those memories with your old man. Something you never forget, getting that first deer with your dad.
Well, for me, it's a toss-up, but I'm just going to have to go definitely with my first bull moose. They're just, even watching them through a scope or spotting them through binoculars, until you drop one and you actually get up close and personal one, they're just such massive, massive animals. It's just it's definitely awe-inspiring as soon as you walk up to it and you realize how big that animal truly is. So that was probably the most memorable for me.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many you've seen. Every time you walk up to one, you're like, wow, this is big.
I imagine so. Man, that is absolutely awesome. So, last question for you guys. We've talked about spring bear hunting. We've kind of recapped your season. We've talked about a lot of stuff that goes into it. If you had to give one piece of big advice to somebody who is new to spring bear hunting, if I was to go out there with you, being the novice that I am, what would be probably the biggest piece of advice that you would want to tell somebody first?
Be patient. My first year, definitely, I had baits out for a week and I was ready to kill a bear. And I learned this year and previous years to and put the time in. Don't shoot the first thing that comes in and looks big. Just keep watching, pay attention, see what you have coming into your specific spot, and take the time to sit there and watch them. Because if you very well could shoot a bear, and then as you're walking out, see one twice the size on the way out. So just patience is definitely key.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there. It's easy to get excited when that first one walks in, but just have patience, wait it out. Get out cameras so you can really judge this kind of the bears that are coming in. Have a look at a lot of pictures for the vital zones, because vital zones are different on bears too. But just do a bit of studying and research.
All good advice. All very sound advice. Well, gentlemen, I very much appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening to jump on here with me and come on the podcast. It's been awesome talking to you guys and hearing about it. It's something that at least down in my neck of the woods, not a lot of people get to experience. So it's really cool to hear stories about stuff like this. So I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Appreciate you having us on.
You guys, and before we conclude, also, you guys do have your own, in addition to being contributors to Fall Obsession, you guys both do have your own kind of your own social media platforms where you share your hunting and outdoor experiences. Before we wrap up, do you want to tell our listeners where they can go to find you guys on social media?
You can find me on YouTube and Instagram as Northern Game Pursuit. We got a couple awesome videos of these two hunts up on there, so definitely go and check them out.
Absolutely.
And you can definitely follow me on Instagram, Berta, BERTA .dream. Yeah, it's kind of a play on words on our province here. Inside joke.
Awesome. Well, and that was another thing I was going to say is both of these hunts that we've kind of mainly wrapped this conversation around. You guys did get on video, and like you said, Nathan, they're on your channel there. So for those of you listeners that want to go check them out, I encourage you guys to do that and see the hunts that these guys are talking about. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you guys again for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Guys, hope you guys enjoyed listening to this Fall Obsession podcast episode. If you have not already, go to social media, follow Fall Obsession on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of awesome content on there for you guys. And subscribe to this podcast. Follow along. We're bringing out a new episode every week. We're getting a lot more diversity on here with guys like Rob and Nathan joining us. I guarantee you these two guys are going to be back on here with us in the very near future. And like they just mentioned, go follow their own pages as well. That way you can follow along with their journey up north. So thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed, and we will see you back next week on another episode of Fall Obsession Podcast.